Hey Zwifters, I'm Simon Schofield and this is the Zwiftcast. Coming up on this episode, Zwift's growth has gone off the charts. We have some very interesting numbers. The London extension drops, lots of extra miles and lots of trees. The Zwiftcast sound test, 3 top-end trainers are in the noise lab. And Zwift Quest, is it a race? Is it a challenge? Is it a new way of Zwifting? Welcome to the first Zwiftcast of 2018. New year, but same old crew, I'm rather glad to say. Shane, g'day mate, how are you?
I'm pretty warm at the moment here. It's about 35 degrees outside and it's steaming hot, so I'm good, very good.
Nathan? G'day mate, I've done it again. Yo dude.
G'day! I'm good with that. G'day. I'm doing well. Good to see you, Simon. Good to see you, Shane.
Well, hot as hell with you, no doubt cold and white with you, Nathan, and as usual for a British winter, mild and damp with me. Shane, mild and damp might be 2 words that come to mind when describing the new course. Oh dear, I'm really sorry about that. That was a bad pun, a painful link. But I did watch your YouTube assessment of the London extension, and I have to say, fella, you looked kind of bored.
Yeah. Look, I wrote it when no one else was around, so I did the world hack. As soon as it dropped, I jumped on, and it wasn't a London day, so I did the world hack and jumped on. It was pretty sparse. I had to have a couple of chats to the deer on the side of the road there. I think I stopped at a few gates, and I tried to read a few street signs, and I used a camera angle to jump on the other side of the wall. That's about it, actually. No, it was interesting, but with no one else around, Zwift feels a bit empty.
Yeah.
So... yeah, look, there wasn't anything spectacular. There was no change to the experience, just some more roads, which is always welcome. But yeah, there was no real wow factor there.
And we'll go on to talk about the reason that this, well, one of the main reasons this extension may exist at all. But I think it's probably fair to say that even the most die-hard of Zwifters suffered a degree of what we might call underwhelmage with the visuals. I mean, it's sort of featureless.
So I did like the castle on top of the hill, which was, is it Leith Hill Castle or something? But we couldn't get to it. If we could have ridden up to the castle and, thrown a U-turn around the little, the castle itself or something and checked it out or had a look at the moat, that would have been interesting, but we sort of could just see it from a distance. So not much there, but it does give us a few extra options. Was there 3 or so different pre-selected routes with this drop? So that's pretty cool. There's a 40k one that I'm keen on doing. It's quite flat for a start and then some decent hills at the end. So that's a good 40k ride, which is about, what's that, going fast? It's about an hour, maybe an hour 15, which is a good Zwifting time. So I'll be keen on checking those routes out.
Nathan, to be slightly more positive, I mean, it is a lot more road. And I think if we dig a little bit deeper and we find this relationship with Prudential, I actually think this is quite an important factor in the development of this course because, well, let me ask you what you think about that. How crucial do you think this relationship with Prudential and with Ride London is, and how germane is that to this extension?
You see how big a lot of these e-fondos are, and I think there's a very real pull, especially at that time of year, to do the Prudential ride on London and to be able to do it virtually and try and create that experience as close as you possibly can is a big pull, I think, and it's going to be a huge event. I think, in real life, and every year we have it on Zwift.
Shane, if we dig a little bit deeper into this, I think that this is all about subscriptions. I mean, some of the numbers around Ride London are really, really interesting. 25,000 people rode it last year. I think it's up to about 30,000 this year. It's whatever. It's really, really big numbers. I would imagine there's probably an equal number, maybe twice that number, maybe even 3 times that number is turned away. They actually apply and they can't get in. So this is a very, very, very large chunk of people. And to an extent, this is Zwift going for them and trying to pick them up as subscribers. And kind of why not, really? I mean, if you were running that business, you might do the same. And the pull to these people is clearly you can train for the event if you got in, and if you didn't get into the event, here's a way of doing it virtually. I mean, is this just a sign of Zwift maturing as a business? A huge chunk of subscribers there that they know they can go for. They've got a relationship with Prudential, so they can talk to them easily. I mean, in some ways, it's a smart move, isn't it? Even if it's some lightly dull course.
I think that was a question, and you've nailed it. Yeah, absolutely. Very, very smart business sense. I had a look at the Strava stats a while back for last year's Prudential Ride London, and I was blown away. My little machine, looking at the query, was chugging away for hours and hours. I think we got about 13 or 14,000 people who had uploaded to Strava at the time I looked at. There would be even more later on. So a massive market there. And I guess this time of year, as you were saying, if people are reined in and it's cold, but they want to train, they've got that carrot dangling out there that they need to ride 160 Ks all up.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever it is, it's a long distance. And right now, if you're indoors, you're not able to go outside, that can be pretty intimidating, trying to even think about riding that far. So getting them on Zwift, making them more confident to go out there and nail those goals on the day for themselves, it's good business. It really is.
Nathan, do we forgive them the slight dullage in service of what looks to be a smart business move?
I think you might be right about that. Also, but a little bit of like, what's the incentive then for those who didn't get in? Like, are they going to incentivize in some sort of way? Like, we're going to give away this many entries to next year's Ride on London, Prudential Ride on London, if you participate or something. You know what I mean? You didn't get in this year, but participate in the virtual ride and get a chance to, or something. There needs to be more incentive, I think, to, because it's like, well, I didn't get in, I can do the virtual ride. It's like, that's cool, but I think some people be like, well, I kind of like to ride outside in the summer. What's the incentive? Is there something more? And I think they could pull in a lot more subscriptions if there are some cool incentives that are in conjunction with Prudential Ride London. Yeah. And, you know, that's pretty good about incentives in that respect, too, in those rides, too.
Yeah. Well, I think that will happen. I mean, I do think we will see that happen. There's an existing relationship there, not only with Prudential, but, of course, via Prudential. It's very easy for Zwift to talk directly or through Prudential to God knows how many, 100,000 cyclists from predominantly Britain, I would have thought, but maybe internationally. So, yeah, big target for Zwift to go out there in search of subscribers. And why wouldn't you? That's the business they're in. And indeed, subscribers, numbers on Zwift is the subject of our next little discussion. January was always going to be big. And my oh my, it certainly looks like it is big. Well, we know what we see. Riders on the platform are hitting big numbers. I saw almost 7,000 on recently, around double what we saw this time last year. Could we hit 10,000 riders on the platform simultaneously in January? Total miles ridden. This is interesting. In January 2015, it was 180,000, not very many. A year later, it was up to 5.8 million. The projection for January 2018 is over 23 million miles, a fourfold increase in 2 years. Average ride length is unchanged. It was 18 miles in 2016. ZHQ expect about the same in January 2018. Average FTP in 2016 was 220 watts. 2 years later, that's up to 226 watts. Zwifters are getting a bit fitter. In January 2016, Zwifters came from 145 countries. Today, it's 195 countries. Zwifters in Ohio in January 2016, 852. Today, it's doubled to 1,677. And the big one, number of accounts. This is not official information, but ZHQ are not denying these numbers. Bit of history first. A TechCrunch article, widely seen as well sourced, put account numbers in October 2016 at 170,000. DC Rainmaker, quoting from a keynote address CEO Eric Min gave to an industry event in July 2017, cited a total accounts created figure of 390,000. And a story on Slate.com in January 2018 gave a figure of 550,000 riders, in inverted commas. That's not an official figure, but I've been kind of guided that it's not incorrect. Zwift is getting bigger. Those are some really seriously big numbers. Shane, I called it the big one on that little video, and I guess it's really, in some senses, the only one that counts. Number of subscribers. We don't know. We don't know, but it looks as though that 550,000 accounts created number is... It's being allowed to be out there, which suggests to me that it's probably about right. What do you think we can infer from that number to number of subscribers? Is it possible to take an educated guess, or shall we just do what we like to do and have a big old speculate?
I think we'll have to take a guess at that. It's really hard because Zwift is still new. It's still relatively new. And nobody else is really doing the same in this volume for the social experience and social media and all that, and sharing rides with other people online virtually. I'd go 15% are still paying. I think there's a lot of people who are inquisitive about what Zwift is and may... Yeah, I'll go 15. I'll go very conservative. That a lot of people sign up and... Yeah, I'll go 15.
Yeah, well, we can't, we can't know. That looks a low side guess to me, but just by instinct, but I have nothing to judge it on. Nathan, in time-honoured fashion, higher or lower?
I'll go higher. And on the numbers, though, that you were talking about earlier, mainly is what tells me higher. I have a feeling it's much... I think it's higher. I don't know. Educated guess. Accounts created. You're looking at 550. I'll say 50% sign up.
Yeah,
I'll say about 50%.
Yeah, I think if I was guessing, I'd probably think 50%, 1 in 2 was reasonable, but. We'll never know, will we? We'll never know because these companies of this type just do not disclose subscriber numbers. But as I said in that little video there, we've got the evidence of our own eyes, and it's a pretty crowded place at the moment, and a couple of matters do arise from that. Shane, do you? Well, I know you've not been on much because it's hot as hell in Australian summer there. But when it is very, very crowded, do you get this kind of claustrophobia thing that some people are talking about? We have seen this reference to Watopia being one everlasting, gigantic pace line recently.
Yeah, for sure. It was yesterday. I was on doing erg mode on a trainer here, and I threw a U-turn. So I rode for about 1 kilometre on the flat course, threw a U-turn. And I rode back, and I actually put the video on Instagram because the little comment was just going for a ride with a few thousand mates. There was only 2,700 people on, but that start area on Watopia was so busy. It was busy coming the other way. It was very quiet going because not a lot of people do the U-turn. But yeah,
does it bother you? Does it bother
you?
Does it bother you that it's busy?
It depends what I'm doing. If I want to just go for a ride by myself, yeah, sure. It's like you wouldn't go for a ride on a busy road, full of traffic. Here in Melbourne, we have Beach Road, and that's very, very busy on a Saturday morning. But if you go midday on a weekday, it's very quiet. You've got the road to yourself, your thoughts to yourself. So it's replicating that. It's doing what happens in real life. If it's busy, I'd rather ride somewhere else. But at the moment, we don't have that option on Zwift. We've sort of all plonked into the one world. So yes, it is getting very busy, and absolutely I can, I know exactly what people are saying when they say it feels a bit claustrophobic, and they want to sort of ride by themselves. A lot of us ride solo. I do here quite a lot, just myself, my thoughts, the road, that's it. On Zwift, you can't do that. unless you pull the internet connection once you're authenticated.
Yeah.
There might be time for some options for us to select there.
Well, yeah, I mean, world switching does feel overdue. But on the crowded thing, I mean, I'll come to you in a second, Nathan, but here's my take on the crowded thing. I actually really like it. Okay, and because the reason I like it is I look at all these people, I'm absolutely surrounded by all these digital cyclists, and each one equates to a real cyclist. And every time I look at
runners now,
and runners, yeah, and I look around and I see all these active people, and without getting kind of too preachy and what do people call cyclists? Smug. Without getting too smug about this, every time I see one of those avatars, that's somebody who's not got their lardy arse on a couch, and I actually find that pretty damn uplifting. No, I do. I mean, I find that really uplifting. I really like that stuff.
I'm just thinking of the quotes. I'm just thinking of the quotes right now.
Yeah, I want it on a T-shirt. I want a T-shirt with.
No, but Nathan, it's true, isn't it? It's true. Less lardy arses on sofas.
The wow factor is there though for I think a ton of people still. And when you log in and you're at that Watopia start-finish line, and there's all these people around you starting their rides, it's. Whoa, there is a whoa factor. Now, for some of us older Zwifters, we're like, it's really crowded. There's a lot of people around here a little bit at times, I can't find...
Any more than 9
Exactly, right. But there is the UI part to it, though, that I think does get crowded. That's the only part to it that bugs me. I love seeing all the people. I love chasing them down, going by, who are you, getting to know all of them. Whether it's just communication with my legs and how many watts we're putting out, or if we're actually communicating in some other way through text or Discord or whatever it might be. But the UI situation, though, the user interface of all of those entities out there is a whole nother ball game that needs some upgrades so that the interactions make way more sense and it's just not a blob of people all together all over the place, so that we can make more sense of our social interactions.
Well, it's really interesting you should say that, because I did get some of those figures from Zwift. Some of it I plucked from elsewhere, but some of those figures from Zwift were from Zwift. Now, there was one thing. It was a bit kind of complicated, so I didn't put it in that little video. But effectively, the number of ride-ons is not increasing anywhere near in proportion to the number of riders. So, the kind of headline on that is Zwift is becoming a less social place as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And we have discussed this before. Do you think that's just because people are frightened of doing something in a crowded room, Nathan, or is it, as you were suggesting a couple of moments ago, do you think the UI needs upgrading to take account of this vastly more populated universe that we now live in?
So I click through the riders nearby daily, like in broadcast, trying to find what's going on in smaller groups, events. And even there, I have struggles at times. Now, when there's a mass that you're just going by, finding somebody just to give a ride on, unless you know them in some sort of way, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Or if you rode with them for a while, then it makes a little bit more sense. But I think incentivizing and upgrading the UI for the social experience is going to be really important if you want to see the same social interaction increases, like you were saying there, along with the miles as they increase as well.
Just maybe make it easier. As you say, when it's scrolling like this, trying to actually give a ride on to somebody is quite tough. But the consequences of growth, that's what Zwift are dealing with. And one of the things that is now getting really huge are these mass participation events. They are really, really mass. At that eFondo a couple of weeks ago, I think, a few days ago, was 3,000 entrants. That's just huge, huge, huge. And these are the consequences of growth that Zwift are now having to deal with. Now, I got the chance to sit down with Charlie Issendorf when I was in Belgium last month. Charlie is the head of events. He make sure things like the eFondo and racing and group rides and group workouts work smoothly on Zwift. And I sat down with him and just asked him, there's a much longer interview actually with him later in the podcast, which is really interesting. But I did ask him whether there might come a time when entry to these kind of mass participation events is going to have to be limited. And this is what he said.
It's been discussed, and we do have limited capability of doing that right now. It's not unusual to expect an event to have some kind of criteria. In the real world, if you wanted to run a 5K event or you wanted to join some kind of a fondo, you have to register early, you have to be part of it. It's just not an open event that anybody can show up. So, moving forward, we might have something like that. I could see it definitely happening. If you think about how fast Zwift is growing and the fact that anybody can join an event, an event could, in theory, have 5,000 Zwifters in it. But what's that experience like? Imagine joining a race that had 5,000 people. That may not be the best experience. But then it opens up another question, like, well, who's eligible? How do I get into the race? Is it first come, first serve? And those are all questions we need to figure out. But the short answer to your question is, yeah, we definitely see some kind of limitations to events.
Shane, we were talking about Ride London, and 1 in 4 entrants can't get in. So why should it be any different on Zwift? I think is what Charlie was saying. They might have to limit entries to improve the experience for the people who do get in. That's what it's like in real life. I mean, is this a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, first of all, the Maratona eFondo, that went off without a hitch, didn't it? So 3,000 riders, everything was cool. So it's not a technical issue thing. So kudos to Zwift for that one. It did work. Look, I think it might be about limiting the supply, and then that drives the demand. We see this in the real world for nearly everything.
Interesting.
That'd be my theory.
Really? So you think they might be being a little bit cunning rather than just kind of regulating numbers for logistical reasons? Interesting theory.
Well, look, it'll drive the chat about it for sure. It'll the hype will go up, the interest, and the lead in will be a little, I guess, longer as well. If people need to fight to get in and muscle their way, we shall see. It'd be interesting.
Interesting idea. Nathan, when I was a much younger man, the nightclubs I wanted to go to were the ones I couldn't get into. Is this the same theory?
Yeah, I don't understand the limiting too much. And I mean, I could see maybe where you would have separate events. I mean, we already have the ability to separate events and call riders. And so, yeah, I think there might be, I think Shane's onto something there, that trying to get into the club, that's a good example, actually. You can't get into the clubs you want to go to. So, and the lead-in, the whole idea of a lead-in and going to this premier event, I think it will also have more incentives around those events. There'll be more, like I was saying, premier events. So there'll be events that everybody wants to do. That's a cool concept. You'll have the rage quitters though. Like, I can't do this event. What are you talking about? I pay a subscription, and flip out. Everybody will tell them to, it's free, but it's not anymore on Zwift Facebook. So.
Okay, well that is one to watch with interest. I have to say, I hadn't actually thought of that really. That making, limiting entry would increase the kind of value of these events. And maybe you're right, Shane, Nathan. Maybe you're right. Maybe we've rumbled them. Anyway, one we will continue to watch with interest. Okay, let's move on. Now, very few things in life are certain, but the "which trainer should I buy" post coming up on Zwift Riders at least once a week is definitely one of those certain things. Very difficult to give advice on these matters. All sorts of factors are involved, price, all kinds of things. But one factor which can be of increasing importance perhaps to an increasing number of Zwifters, particularly if they live in a city or an apartment or they've got close neighbours, is how much noise top-end trainers make. So I've done this before, but I thought I'd do it again and do it a bit better. And here we are. Here is the Zwiftcast noise tests on trainers. In performance terms, the top trainers are all excellent. I'm sure each one may have a tiny quirk or two, but the Kicker, Neo and Drivo are all great bits of kit. It's little wonder that people agonise over which to choose. Well, one factor which may be important to some people is noise. Now, with the tunes pumping out and the fan blasting away as Zwifters, we're maybe not that bothered, but other people in the house might be, not to mention neighbours. So, let's run a test. The Neo is reputed to be the quietest trainer, so that's our benchmark. We'll test the Kicker and the Drivo against the Neo. The room is the same. The microphone, an Audio-Technica AT875R, in case you're wondering, is in an identical position relative to each trainer. And I've set up a workout to run the trainers at a variety of wattages. I've also rigged a pretty good decibel meter, again in the same position relative to the trainer for each test. Now, decibels are useful, it is a measure of loudness after all, but this number isn't everything. It's the nature and type of sound that may be more important. Some sounds are more intrusive and may travel further than others. So, let's get on with things. This is the Neo, then Drivo, then Kicker at 250 watts around 85 RPM. I'll play them back to back with no commentary, then repeat the sounds with my thoughts. The Neo at 250 watts. The Drivo 250 watts. The Kicker at 250 watts. The Neo scores the lowest numbers, hovering around 68 decibel and rated as moderate by the meter. The noise is a kind of whirring sound. The Drivo tips the meter into yellow, rated as loud, although it's not really loud at all. It's a slightly harsher, more metallic sound. There's a distinct change in pitch for the Kicker. It's a higher, whinier sound, although on decibels it's very close to the Neo, just hitting 70 once, and still rated as moderate by the meter. Let's increase to 400 watts, same drill, Neo, Drivo, then Kicker. With no commentary, then I'll repeat with some detail. The Neo at 400 watts. Drivo at 400 watts. The Kicker at 400 watts. The Neo is up to the low 70s dB, but the note hasn't changed, still a whir or a drone maybe. The Drivo's in the high 70s and seems louder, but I'm at a higher cadence and in a smaller gear than I was in the Neo. The Kicker's mainly in the mid-60s dB, but has the different higher pitch note than the other trainers. Let's push on a bit and hit some higher numbers. I took all three trainers up to around 650 watts. The Neo is consistent, still pretty quiet. No change for the Drivo, louder and fuller. Kicker, same pattern, a whine but not troubling the meter much. So my conclusions, the Neo is a quiet trainer, but we kind of knew that. Good to see it confirmed if you own a Neo. The Drivo, I'd rate the loudest on the meter and in your ears, but disturbingly so, no, I don't really think so. This is the second generation Kicker, and Wahoo have worked very hard to tame the whine. It's not been a complete success, but it has gone a long, long way to improve the situation over the first generation. Different noise from the others, but loud? No, it's not really. We were talking about growth earlier, and we talked to a very brief extract from a longer interview with Charlie Issendorf about one of the consequences of growth. And Charlie manages, as I said, the whole kind of events and clubs and groups function on Zwift. So it's been a while since I've had a chance to sit down and talk to him properly. I did get that chance in Belgium, and here's what Charlie said on a whole variety of issues. Really interesting stuff, this. Have events expanded as quickly as you might have imagined, or more quickly?
As quickly. I wouldn't say more quickly. I think we all agreed that events was the future of Zwift, the social aspect of riding together. There's been some big improvements over the last year. Even the culling of the riders so that you don't see everybody is an important thing. Having a dedicated start area. I mean, for people that have been on Zwift, they think that it's been there forever, but that only started a little over a year ago. So yeah, we've made some important features that have made events better, but there's still a lot to do.
What are the limiting factors, Charlie? I mean, what stops there being an event on Zwift literally every 30 seconds?
Good question. It depends on the type of events. We get a lot of requests for races. The challenge with that is that we don't want Zwift to appear like a racing-only platform. We don't want somebody that's new to Zwift to go to the event schedule and see a race starts in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. A lot of people don't want to race, let's face it. A lot of people want to do group rides. So what's the limiting factor with the group ride? Well, a group ride requires a dedicated ride leader, somebody that has experience with the platform, somebody that knows how to keep the group together. And even that's a challenge.
It's very interesting to hear that you say you might limit races, for instance, because of the image about the platform that may project. So that leads you to think that your approvals process for events is actually quite textured and it's not a straightforward yes-no decision. There's quite a lot of thinking goes into it.
Correct. For example, if a race organizer wants to organize a race and you look at the schedule, it's like, and there's a race starting 5 minutes before, is there a need to have a race starting every 5 minutes? If we have a quality race, why have another one starting 5 minutes later? Why don't we focus on making the existing one even better? Or just say to the organizer, well, why don't you choose a time slot that's doesn't have a race starting 5 minutes before? We want events to happen 24 hours a day. What we don't want is to have the same type of event happening every 5 or 10 minutes.
The ability to host a private event. So me and my club mates want to get together and that's all we want to do, just me and my club mates. What's stopping you doing that at the moment?
It's priorities. We are working on private events. It will happen. The thing about Zwift is that everything that we say will happen, happens. It doesn't happen in the time frame that people would necessarily like, but when we say there's an expansion coming, it happens. When we say we're going to have an event starting area, it happens. So when I say that there will be private events, it will happen. I'm not sure of a timeline for that. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I think it's part of a bigger picture. So when you say when is a private event starting, what is a private event? Is that part of a greater picture of club functionality? Do we need to build a portal that will allow clubs to create a club on Zwift, create their own event, have that event only be eligible for people that they've invited? So, just adding a private event opens up a can of worms. It's like, well, what's the bigger picture? Do we want to just say that event's private, or do we want it part of something larger, which is what we're calling club functionality?
Club functionality itself suggests a kind of suite of different types of functionality and a suite of different types of things that could happen to support club riding. Is that in your thinking?
Yeah, definitely. So let's say you want to start a club on Zwift. You go to some kind of a portal that allows you to create your club name. It then allows you to add or delete club members. Within that portal, it will allow you to create your own private event. Perhaps in the future there could be upload your team kit So there could be a function where you could upload your team kit. Kits will always be a prized possession. So even if we have the club functionality, there may be a time when we want to limit it to a club that has, let's say, 500 plus members or something like that. Otherwise, to start a club and get your kit in right away, there's a lot of development that needs to be done behind this. But if you've grown your club, if you've shown that you're a good club organizer, if you have 500, let's say, members, then yeah, you would be eligible for a kit.
Nathan, the idea of a club portal, that's kind of pretty new to me, actually. It sounds really, really interesting. What would you like to see?
Well, the ability to organize chat within game with people that you're familiar with, right? So a basic guild chat is what you would call it in most MMO situations, right? So if it was a club chat, right? So you log in, you have global chat, but you have club chat then as well, where people are organizing and grouping together usually. Usually club chat is used then, or guild chat is used then to find a group and go do something together in the game, get objectives done, whatever it might be. So if you were logged in on that day and you had a daily or a weekly, or you were up to something with a course, or you had some sort of a workout plan, or you were planning on doing a race, it would all function within game. Other interesting part though was, if you're a club that has this amount of pull, then you get these extra features. Yeah. That is unique to Zwift. That is not in the rest of the game world, really. Like, if guilds exist, everybody can make one.
All right.
So that's interesting.
Maybe it's back Shane.
Now, I think that was just with kits, though. That was just with kits. I'm sorry. That was just with kits, though.
Yeah,
so I want to make that very clear. Very clear.
Yeah, well, he was talking about extra benefits. I mean, I think he mentioned kits specifically, but he was talking about extra benefits accruing to clubs with more numbers. Was my interpretation of that. I mean, Shane, we'd all got a bit conspiracy theory early on about limiting events to make them more desirable. Is this another side of that coin, or is club functionality like a fantastically welcome development with, a load more stuff? And actually, is this the way forward? Where we've got a world which is so crowded, and as we were just saying earlier, very difficult to give people ride-ons. Is chunking it down into a club structure, just the way to go, really?
That would be very welcomed, in my opinion, for sure. I've had a lot of queries, even myself, in my own inbox. With I run a spin class. I want to do this virtually. I run a club. How can we do our thing virtually? I don't want to be involved in the mainstream of having a big event for everyone worldwide. I just want it my own, for my own club or my own little tribe. I guess if we've spoken about tribes before. Very, very welcome. I can't wait to see where this goes. And if that includes a lot more growth, a lot more people on the platform, and a lot more options to ride, for sure.
Nathan, private events, Charlie he committed to it. He said they are going to happen. It's just a question of when. That is another massively welcome move. I think loads of people are going to welcome that.
The best clubs who put on the best events, just like the best rides that put on the best group rides, grow and become really big group rides, right? And then the ones that are kind of like, well, the leader isn't pulling their weight, or it's a little bit, it doesn't get the feeling that the good vibes over there. Well, that one doesn't do quite as well. And so, and then people of, like feathers end up to come together and do the same things that they want to do in the spaces that they have the power over. So I think putting the power and the ability to organize and create your own events in those private club spaces is a really good idea.
I think it'll bring Zwift back a little bit more social as well. If you're Zwifting with just your 30 group of friends, or your 40 teammates, or 50 club mates, the chat will be a little bit more, I guess, personalized. There'll be a few in-jokes, and everyone loves an in-joke. Sharing an in-joke with 7,000 Zwifters. I think the only in-joke we have is hi. Hi.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, interesting. Interesting to see how that one develops. I've lost count of the number of times I've used that phrase on the Zwiftcast. I seem to use it every single time, which is because there is lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff coming down the pipeline. But as Charlie said, sometimes not as quickly as Zwifters would like to see it, but we always do seem to get there eventually. But something new that has come up is a a new way of racing, I think it's been described, as well as almost a new way of Zwifting, actually. It's Zwift Quest, and I spoke to one of its founders, Johnny Noblet.
So it's a different format of competitive riding on Zwift, where it's not all about the FTP, not about your power, not about how strong your legs are. It's about using your mind, going on an adventure around Watopia and also soon London, and finding new places as quickly as you can, and then getting back to a finish point out on course.
It's kind of like orienteering, isn't it? If people know what that is, you've got a series of checkpoints and you've got to ride through them, but there's more than one way to do it. I guess it means like spending some time with the Zwift map and working out the best way to do it. Would that be your strategy?
Yeah, I think you're looking at the map, and also because obviously the map's like a little bit, it's flat, so you don't see any elevations, any of the climbs you need to do. So kind of going for a bit of a free ride around Watopia or the other courses and getting to know where all the locations are. It gives you kind of a good idea of like how to get to the places quickly. And yeah, it's very similar to orienteering, and that's kind of where the kind of inspiration of it really kind of came from.
Yeah. Yeah, and at the moment it's completed solo. I'm thinking that this would be a really cool thing to do actually as a team. Could that be likely in the future?
Yeah, that's gonna be like very likely. It's something that we're going to plan to do. We need to kind of work out how we can like validate the results for team members. We need to kind of do a little bit of work in the back end with my brother to make sure we get that all working.
But now you mentioned your brother there. Was this your idea or your brother's idea, or is this Noblet Brothers Inc.?
My brother Dan, he actually does a real life version of kind of Zwift Quest, which is called Lane Quest in the Lake District. So we chatted about it and chatted to a few people in the community about like the best way to do it on Zwift. And then in the end, kind of went back to my brother and we decided that we could use kind of his kind of computer coding website knowledge, and we kind of could build something together. So it was a good little brotherly kind of project we had.
Yeah, no, it sounds cool actually. I mean, it's racing, but not racing. Well, it is racing, but it's a different form of racing, isn't it? Yeah,
it's like another dimension of racing on Zwift. It kind of adds another level of kind of user input. Normal kind of traditional racing that we see out on Zwift. You put the power in for your legs. You choose when you want to put in more power. You choose where you want to stick with, the brake. Go with the brake, or you want to stick with the pack. You play with, that's like your only real inputs. Whereas this is a lot more kind of, theory around like, when you want to go to which location, whether you leave the climbing bit to the last, or you do that when you've got like your fresh legs, and you kind of play around with like what routes you want to go to as well. But then I think it adds a bit more, another little level of engagement. And they've had up to the moment we've had just over 100 people attempt it, which considering we've not really pushed promotion that much and we're still testing it, like we're pleased with having that number of people go for it and kind of go the extra steps to kind of get themselves kind of verified for getting the results in.
Sounds brilliant. I mean, it sounds a bit underground at the moment, but I think the more people that do it, the more it'll go mainstream. Excellent. Sounds a really, really cool idea, Johnny. Well, thanks very much for all your work developing it, and to your brother too. And I'm going to have a go and report back. Top work, Johnny. Talk to you later.
Good stuff. Good. Thanks so much, Simon. Good luck.
Nathan, I'll come to you shortly because I know you've been really, really closely involved with the development and promotion of Zwift Quest. But Shane, I just want to ask you very, very quickly first. Do you think this works as an alternative race format?
Absolutely, it will. We saw Pokemon Go in the real world go nuts. It went crazy. We had people running around the suburbs. We had people collecting things and going up. One thing it needs, though, it needs in-game integration. Something like Mario collecting stars on the roads for 26 years now in Mario Kart. There needs to be something in-game so we can ride past and collect something so we know we've collected it, and we can throw a U-turn and race somewhere else. So absolutely, it just needs to be, the integration needs to be just absolutely seamless and a heap of fun.
Yeah. No, I must say I found it a little bit difficult for reasons we'll talk about in a few moments, actually. But Nathan, I mean, I think Shane's right. It would be nice if there was a ding dong bell or some damn thing when you went past a checkpoint. But you've been you've been really closely involved in this. I mean, where do you see it going? Do you really see this as a big thing, and potentially a very big thing?
Zwift Quest was Johnny's originally though, and we did the first Zwift Quest actually year and a half ago, like maybe even longer than that actually. So there was a long time ago Zwift Quest launched, and we did it actually as an event, as a team event. Team Experimental was involved, Vision was involved, a few others, and it was actually a broadcasted team thing where we were watching where each team was going and commentating on how they were tactically hitting every spot out on course. And all they had to do was actually get a team member to each. Now this is a little different actually. You can do it solo right now on your Strava account. It's connected then, and you get a time essentially. But there's a lot to do with Zwift Quest. And the goal, again, just like with the event module and races and what we've asked for in races because of what the community has developed there, is to push features forward for sure. And so as integration in game, I think is definitely something that's on the radar there. I would love to see, I love the idea of the stars, picking up stars and like even some sort of power up while you get the star because you got it, or I don't know. There's so many different cool things that you could do with it.
Yeah. Well, I am going to talk about my experience on Zwift Quest actually, because nothing to do with Zwift Quest, but it was one of those rides for me, and I've had them on trainers and I've had them on in real life, and it was just what can I say, boys? It was when a good ride goes bad. Okay, so I got on the trainer. To be honest, I wasn't really feeling up for it, to be perfectly frank with you. And then I reached over to, I don't know, get something. It wasn't a drink because I'd forgotten to bring a drink onto the trainer. I reached over to get something and knocked the speaker off the wall. So my soundbar fell off the wall and is dangling by the mains lead. I thought, oh God, well, yeah, what next, really? And then so I got off the bike, then I got back on, and it was like I'd forgotten which checkpoint I'd been to, and it was one of those rides where I just thought, why am I bothering? When good rides go bad, Shane, either on the trainer or in real life, has this ever happened to you? Where the stars are just not aligned?
Many occasions it has. Typically, it's called a Windows update halfway through a Zwift session. I've got those settings sorted now, but that's happened multiple times. It's called a flat battery on an iOS device. It's something like that. Or, it happens often. Even outside, you just don't have that mojo. You just don't feel it sometimes. You just ride home, and it happens to all of us, Simon, for sure.
Well, it certainly happens to me big time. I was not a happy bunny. The one thing I do want to discuss, though, kind of on that line, Nathan, is one of the. Do you know what? One of the things I really enjoy about cycling, probably like 80 or 90% of the time that I do it, is its relative mindlessness. Now, this is going to sound a bit odd, but I quite like the idea that when you get on a bike, the only thing you're really worried about is keeping your legs moving and the pedals turning, and obviously if you're outside, like staying alive, but that does become kind of instinctive after a while, and it's quite a mindless thing. I think that's what makes it therapeutic in a way. You don't really have to think, or the only thinking you've got to do is like, I need to stay on that guy's wheel, I need to not get dropped by my club mates on the group ride, I need to beat this guy up the hill because I usually beat him up the hill. It's quite, you don't have to think too much, and something like Zwift Quest requires thought. And when my legs are turning, I don't know whether it's a consequence of my age, but blood kind of seems to drain from my brain to feed the legs, and I find it quite difficult to think and cycle. Am I peculiar in this, Nathan? Do you think?
I think there's different types of cyclists. I mean, I'm starting to get there maybe, where I'm like, okay, I just want to ride and disappear. But for the bulk of my pro racing career, it was all about how do I get the fastest I can possibly get and beat everybody around me and however I can or whatever it is. And so there was a lot more like thought and tactics going into it. So for me, racing and riding always had a lot of planning and thinking going into it and not just checking out. at all. It was actually exactly the opposite.
Shane, back to this this kind of thought and cycling together thing. I mean, time trialists are notorious for focus, which I'm going to read as not thinking about anything else apart from legs and that power number on your display in front of you. Do you like to think and ride at the same time, or do you like to just do the ride thing?
Definitely think and ride, but the thought patterns are kept quite simple. It is, can I go harder? Can I keep going as hard as I am now? Or do I have to go slower? That's pretty much the three questions I keep asking myself.
Yeah, well, no, I'm with you on that. Keep it simple. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, excellent mantra that. Yes. Okay. All right. Let's move on. So, just finally, whilst I had Charlie in Belgium, I did feel I had to go into this slightly vexed area about which, of course, there is much chat, and amazingly, we got through an entire podcast without it coming up. But here it is, because we can't ignore it, because it gets talked about so much, and that is racing and cheating and stuff. So I did ask Charlie whether he felt that Zwift should kind of take more responsibility, I guess is one way of putting it, in terms of regulating racing, and this is what he said. What can be done in the short, perhaps, and medium term to make racing better?
I think it's important for us to work with the community organizers, to give them the data that they need. KISS and Zwift Power and these guys have done a phenomenal job of rooting out cheaters. But like you said, I don't think they're cheating on purpose. I think it's a lot of calibration issues. But still, it affects people. So I think giving the organizers more data, working with them closely. We have no immediate plans to have an official organization within Zwift, like, Zwift Racing, does not exist. It's all community driven.
It sounds from that answer as though you are going to continue to contract out effectively policing racing and maybe even sanctioning riders to a third party. That Zwift is not, if you took the sharp view, Zwift is not going to take the responsibility of doing that. What's the logic behind that? Why should, to put it in brutal terms, why should somebody else do your dirty work?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily contracting out. So I don't want that word to be used, because it implies that we're paying them. The community has done a fantastic job, like I said. As a business, Zwift is a business at the end of the day. Disqualifying somebody, a paying customer, right, is not necessarily the best thing to do from a business standpoint.
But I'm going to jump in there, Charlie. Other MMOs do it.
The community is doing a great job, and I don't want it to sound like you suggested, having somebody else do our job for us. We think they're doing better than we could right now. Let's just put it that way.
Can Zwift hold that position?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think so, 100%. If the entire infrastructure is built around the community designing these events and putting these events on and being able to benefit from the events, though, I think that Zwift is benefiting from subscribers participating in these events, and that the community members then who are putting them on, there needs to be a space then for them to play in order to, put a lot of work into creating these events and doing. It's the same thing, kind of like a race organizer in real life. Everyone has access to the roads or the course or wherever the course is, but an organizer that has good reputation, that's made the deals with whoever owns the land or whatever it is to come in and put on a good event, is going to benefit from that, right? But they don't own the land. Yeah. They don't own the sponsorships or whatever that is, but they can create all those partnerships in that space, and I think it's sustainable. We see it in real life.
Yeah. No, it's good.
So,
I mean, that is a good.
Yeah.
That's a good analogy. In fact, Shane, the analogy I was going to draw actually was that okay, Zwift is a garden, and all the events, all the garden parties that happen are created by the people in the community within the garden, which is within this little kind of walled area. Let's call it a walled garden. We used to talk about walled gardens a lot. Now, that's all fine, okay, and all the events and, Poetry Corner over here and God knows what here and the hot dog stall over here in the walled garden, they're all created by the community who are contained within this walled garden. Just to ridiculously overextend the analogy, is it not then down to the people who built the wall around the garden to keep the walled garden safe? In other words, it's kind of fine for the community to create all this content, but shouldn't Zwift have some role in making sure the place where the content happens, which is created for free by the community, is, I don't know, it's such a loaded phrase now, so I hesitate to use it, but is a safe place. And so there is some regulation. The wall is built in such a way as it's not going to fall in on the community. It's a crazily overextended analogy, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. I think they have the responsibility to make sure the platform is a good experience for every single user, from the single user riding along at 1 watt per kilo to the rider riding along at 6 watts per kilo legitimately. So to ensure that, I think an easy way to do it, though, is to give ride leaders the tools to police their own events and their own races or rides or things like that. So, yeah, that's probably the better way to go. I can see from a business point of view, they want more subscribers, and denying people the service is less subscribers in theory. So, yeah, they're in between a virtual rock and a virtual hard place.
Yeah. No, it's for sure.
What is safety? That's the question. What is safety, Simon? Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Like, I would agree with you 100% when it comes to a safe place. Whether or not somebody is Z-powering my KOM is not affecting my actual safety.
No, safety is the wrong word.
It's affecting my pride. It's affecting the safety of my KOM that I earned, UZ Power Beast. Like, get off it.
Yeah, well, I mean, safety is probably the safe place is probably the wrong phrase. I guess what I meant was regulated place. So things happen within this garden according to a set of rules that we all subscribe to. But oh god, this is such a
onus though
difficult
is on the organizer. The onus is on the organizer, Simon. And I think that's why you're going after this. And Zwift is now an organizer in partnership with KISS. But there's a higher level of accountability though on that organization. So the onus is on the organizer. They have the power in the government, and they're in partnership with KISS right now. And so that one's going to have a bigger microscope on it, I would think. Yeah. Right? Like, it's going to have a more official stance to it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we will return to this. It's not a problem that's going to be fixed easily. Okay, let's wrap this one up. First one of 2018. And 2018, January is Tour Down Under month. Shane, it's the return of proper bike racing. Much excitement in your bit of the forest. I know you're kind of packing your bags and off any minute now, aren't you, over to Adelaide?
Yeah, less than 24 hours. We're in the car and heading over to Adelaide for the week of mostly riding. We'll probably miss most of the racing. We'll catch the replays on telly, but it's just the atmosphere. It's just everyone over there riding. Hopefully there'll be a lot of live streams for people to catch up on, if not replays on the web. So if anybody wants their fix of Pro Tour cycling, it's coming up this week.
Excellent. And Zwift are there, aren't they?
They are indeed at the Rafa pop-up store, which is hidden away from the big, you'll find it if you're there, you know where it is. They're holding multiple events though, so they've bitten off a lot this time around. This is the third year we'll see Zwift at the Tour Down Under, so that's quite a good partnership, I guess, they've had with the event running. But yeah, are they in partnership with the event though? That is the question, or will we see somebody else? Simon, do you have some more info on that?
Well, I hear rumours that one of Zwift rivals, Zwift Grows, is going to be present at the TDU, and present I heard in the village, Shane, actually in the official bit of the TDU, which is quite bold, isn't it? That's quite a bold move.
Look, here's some inside information for people who aren't familiar with how events run. They're very exclusive. The contracts, the partnerships and all that can get a bit aggressive. And previously, well, I guess why Rafa is sort of hidden away is because it's sponsored by Santini, a clothing company. They're the sponsor of the event, and they don't let anybody else around. They've got a safe zone. So the partnerships things get a little crazy. It's not as a consumer, you want to go there and just see everybody and see everything and all your options. It's kind of not like that. There's a lot of commercials going on behind the scenes. I think Virtua Go have the jump on Zwift, but look, Zwift have the numbers. But look, bring on the competition, and look, Zwift will have the numbers there for sure. And I hear Zwift and beers go very, very well together. And with the Aussies and beers and Zwift, we'll all be there having a good time.
Well, I'm very, very jealous. I mean, January in the UK, it's just like, God, it's the longest month. It's just grey and cold and not a leaf on the tree. I mean, I don't like going outside at all in January. It's just awful. Nathan, I guess it's just you're confined to barracks as well, aren't you? Just by snow. It's been so cold in America, from what I've seen. I mean, I know America's a big place.
Yeah,
but it's been crazy cold.
Negative 16 degrees Fahrenheit last week at one point. That was, I think, without wind chill, but it is warming up a little bit. Now, when we say warming up, it's still negative degrees, but it's warming up a little bit. We are going to pour an ice rink maybe in the backyard for the kids. Lindsay's been posting some amazing videos of her and the kids going crazy inside. If you don't follow us on Facebook in any way, you might want to check some of that fun out. But otherwise, what's happening is, ZCL, we have a huge focus again on the community streamers. A lot of people are starting to stream, which is really cool. We have a new Facebook group that you can join if you are live streaming or looking to get into live streaming as a support group. It's Zwift Community-Live Streamers. And you got to make sure to put where you're live streaming in your ask to get into that group, just so you know. Don't forget to do that.
Let's say goodbye. And just before we do, okay, here's just final little guessing game. Shane, your guess for peak number of Zwifters, peak Zwift number in January. Give us a guess.
I wanted over 10,000 because I wanted that buffer overflow to see if they got 5 digits. I'll go 8888.
Oh, that's easy to remember. God, I sounded so camp then, didn't I? 8,888. Nathan, your guess for peak Zwift, please, before the end of January.
9,567.
Oh, okay.
Spot on.
Well, I sort of think it would be surprising if we did get over 10,000, but one of us has got to go over 10,000, so I'm going for 10,010. There will be no prizes for anybody who is close or far away or anything. Excellent.
If I hit that, I'm getting something. Even if I give it to myself.
Yeah, you probably should. You probably should find a bookmaker who takes unusual bets, Nathan, and see if you can put $5 on that one. Okay, thank you very much, boys. Great to see 2018 starting off as we left 2017 with lots of fun happening on Zwift and us talking nonsense about it again, hopefully in an entertaining manner. Great to see you both back in 2018. Thank you very much indeed for your contributions. See you next time, fellas.
Cheers, boys. See you then.
Cheers.
And thank you for listening. Just the usual vote of thanks to Zwift for their continued support of the podcast, for which we are very grateful. And the usual reminder that despite that support, Zwift exercise no influence over what any or each of us say. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.